cells. Cells make up every living thing except viruses, and you have two main types. You have prokaryotes and you have eukaryotes. Your eukaryotes are your animal and plant cells. I'll start with your eukaryotes because you will know them better. Cells can make up multicellular organisms, so they join together to make something, and those are your animals and plants, and these are eukaryotes. The main difference between eukaryotes and prokaryotes are that eukaryotes have nucleuses. So those are your animal cells, plant cells, stem cells, specialized cells, and your gametes or sex cells. So this is your animal cell. At 1 you have the nucleus, which contains genetic material and controls the activities of the cell, and it's just a black ball usually, and it's got your chromosomes inside and your DNA. Then 2, kind of looks like a hot dog, is the mitochondria, which releases energy through aerobic respiration. And you look at respiration later on, not in this one, but in another video. 3 is the cytoplasm, which is like a jelly substance, and most of the cell's chemical reactions occur there, and enzymes are in the cytoplasm to control the rate of reaction. 4 are the little dots, and those are your ribosomes, which produce protein through protein synthesis. 5 is the cell membrane, which holds the cell together and controls what enters and leaves the cell. And your specialized cells for animals are sperm cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, but there are other ones, but those are your main ones. Plant cells include everything an animal cell has, so 1 being your nucleus, 2 being the mitochondria, which is the hot dog, 3 is the cytoplasm, which is the jelly, like the background, 4 is the ribosomes, which are your dots, 5 is the cell membrane. So nucleus contains genetic material, controls the activities of the cell. 2, mitochondria releases energy through respiration. 3 is the cytoplasm, where most of the cell's chemical reactions occur, and enzymes control the rate of reaction. 4 are the ribosomes, which produce protein through protein synthesis. 5 is the cell membrane, which holds the cell together and controls what enters and leaves the cell. Then 6 is your permanent vacuole, which contains cell sap to keep the cell turgid. Turgid is the key word, which means stiff. 7 are your circles, and those are the chloroplasts, which include a green pigment, which is why plants are green, and it's called chlorophyll, which absorbs sunlight for photosynthesis, which also occurs in the chloroplast. 8 is the cell wall, which is made of cellulose. It's only made of cellulose in plant cells, and it supports and strengthens the cell. Animal cells and plant cells are both eukaryotes. Plant cells, specialized cells, are your root hair cells, phloem, xylem, and palisade cells, but obviously there are more. Your usual diagram of a plant cell is your palisade cell. We'll continue with the eukaryotes with the specialized animal cells. So you've got your nerve cells, which look like that, give or take, and their job or function is to carry electrical signals along the body, and they are adapted for their function with large surface area. They are long to cover large distances and have branch connections to join together for the nervous system. Then you have muscle cells, which contract and relax for movement. That's their function, and they are adapted with lots of mitochondria, as you can see in their diagram, for lots of energy, and they are long, so they have space to contract. Then you have red blood cells, which carry oxygen around the body. They are concave, so they're like a donut, but like the hole doesn't go the entire way through, so it's like a donut, but the hole doesn't go the whole way through, pretty much. That's what concave means, and that's so they have a larger surface area, so they can hold more oxygen. They don't have a nucleus, but they're not a prokaryote, they're still an animal cell. They don't have a nucleus, so they have more room for oxygen, and they contain hemoglobin, which attaches to the oxygen. You have white blood cells, but they're more important in your pathogen topic, but their job is to defend the body from pathogens, their adaptations aren't important for the GCSE. Then you have villi, which absorb nutrients in the small intestines. They have high surface area, so more nutrients can be absorbed, and they have a network of capillaries, which is a little bloodstream close to the surface for good blood supply. Then you have the alveoli, which are in your lungs, and they release waste CO2, and they absorb oxygen for respiration. They're one cell thick for short diffusion pathway. They have capillary again, it's for good blood supply because you get the oxygen from your lung, give it into the blood, and then from the blood back into the alveoli for the CO2. And then they have a large surface area, so more diffusion can happen at once. And then your other specialized cells are your gametes, or your sex cells. Your egg cells, which contain the mother's chromosomes and actually turns into the embryo or baby. And then your sperm cells, which contain the father's chromosomes, which fertilizes the eggs. Sperm cells have a long flagellum, or tail, and a streamlined head for swimming. And they have lots of mitochondria as well for energy. They also contain an enzyme to digest the egg cell membrane so it can actually fertilize the egg. And then your other eukaryote specialized cells are for the plants. So in a leaf, this is the structure, but we won't go over the structure properly because that's not really this topic, and it's not very important for this one. It's just to give you an idea of where everything is. Palisade cells carry out photosynthesis. Those are the ones that look like that. They've got a bunch of chloroplasts for photosynthesis, and then they're very high up on the leaf because they're in the palisade mesophyll layer, or the spongy mesophyll layer. So these here, these like rectangles, that's your palisade mesophyll, so it's just packed to the brim, so it can take out as much photosynthesis as possible. And then lower down there's less of them, but they're still there, and then at the bottom there aren't any, because sunlight can't get there. And like in your plant roots, you won't have any palisade cells because it's in the ground, so it's not going to get any sunlight. Then you have your phloem and xylem, which are in your vascular bundle here. And your phloem transports nutrients in a process called translocation. They are alive, they're living columns of cells with pores in the walls of the cells to let cell sap in, which you get from the permanent vacuole, which is this big thing in the middle of the cell. And they're two-way, so it can go up or down in the tunnels, essentially. And xylem are basically the opposite of the phloem. They transport water in a process called transpiration. They are dead and they don't have cell walls in between them. It's one way, it only goes up, and it's strengthened by a substance called lignin. And they're also found in the vascular bundle. Then you will have your prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are your single-celled organisms, and they are called simple organisms, but not really. This is the most complex you'll see it. You'll usually see it like this, however. Well, one is your circular strand of DNA. It's loose in the cytoplasm and contains the genetic material. Two is the cytoplasm, which, as you would know from before, most of the chemical reactions of the cell occur here, and enzymes control the rate of reaction. It's like a jelly. Three are plasmids, which are small loops of DNA to carry genetic material. And four is the cell membrane, which holds the cell together and controls what enters and leaves the cell. And five is the cell wall, which is not made of cellulose this time, it is made of sugars. And it also supports and strengthens the cell. In more complex prokaryotes, you might get any of these, not all, as many of these, or as few of these. 6 is the capsule, which is a protective layer, but it helps it stick to surfaces because they're organisms as well as cells. There's only one cell in the organism, so you have to view it as a creature instead of part of a creature. So it lets it stick to things. 7 are little hairs called a pilus or a pilus, and they are used to attach to surfaces as well. And then 8 is a flagellum or a tail, and that's used for swimming. It's also on your sperm cell. Sperm cells are eukaryotes, not prokaryotes like these. They don't specialize. There's only one type of each, because each is just an organism. In a cell, you have organelles, so that's like your mitochondria, your chloroplasts, your cell walls. They make up cells. Similar cells make up tissues, so if you get a bunch of muscle cells, you'll get a muscle tissue. And then similar tissues make up a heart, so if you get, an organ. So if you had a bunch of heart tissues, it will make up a heart, which is an organ. And a bunch of organs will group together into an organ system, so your digestive system, reproductive system, respiratory system, and your cardiovascular system. And that's just a chain you need to know. It's called cell organization. Cells die, break, and there's problems with them sometimes. So you need to get new ones, and that's called mitosis, or the cell cycle for eukaryotes. So you have an original cell. It's a simplified drawing, so it's just got a nucleus. The nucleus is filled with chromosomes. Chromosomes are made up of DNA, and they code for a certain characteristic, so like hair color or eye color, for example. Your cell will expand, and the chromosomes in the nucleus will duplicate. The organelles will duplicate too, but for mitosis you focus primarily on the chromosomes. They line up into a row and split apart. They spread apart, and the cell membrane stretches and forms around both of them. And eventually it'll stretch so much it will just cut down the middle into two cells, which are identical to the original cell. I know in the drawing they're not identical, but imagine they are. And they are also identical to each other, and they are called daughter cells. Prokaryotes don't do mitosis, they do bacteria fission, which is a bit different, but it's quite similar. You have a bacteria cell, it expands and it duplicates the organelles, plasmids, strands of DNA, everything in it. And then they move to either side, and the cell membrane begins to split again, and then they rip apart into two cells which are identical to each other, and the original, called daughter cells. Bacteria fission happens a lot faster than mitosis, but it needs warmth, nutrients, and time. So if you were to grow bacteria, you need to have those in account. It happens really fast. So for example, here's a little graph. If you have one bacteria, one split will have 2, then it'll be 4, then it'll be 8, then it'll be 16, so it'll be 32. So by the time it's the end of this graph, it'll be way over there, won't it? So it's very fast. So you have to control the rate of bacterial growth, otherwise you will have a problem. Stem cells are your other main type of cell. Stem cells are undifferentiated cells that can differentiate into other cells. Differentiate is the key word, as you can probably tell. And differentiation is changing and adapting for a specific function. So stem cells do that, as you'll see, and specialized cells. All of these animal cells don't look like that, do they? It's because they've adapted and changed to fit their function. So your keywords are function, which is their job, adaptation, how they've changed for their job, and differentiation, which is changing for the job, adapting to the function. Alright, stem cells, you have three main types of stem cells. Your embryotic stem cells, or embryonic stem cells, which are found in very early embryos, 3 to 4 days old, and they can differentiate any animal cell. Then you have your adult stem cells, which are found in certain places, mainly your bone marrow, and they can only differentiate into certain cells, like your blood cells are from your bone marrow. And then you have your plant stem cells, which are found in the meristem instead of your bone marrow, and they're only found there. And they can differentiate into any plant cell. You might use stem cells for different reasons. In plants, for example, you can grow plant stem cells in a lab, very cheap, very fast. And if you find a very rare plant that's about to go extinct, you can clone it. You can just duplicate the plant to prevent it going extinct. Or if you have a crop with a certain characteristic you like disease resistance or a big yield, large size, stuff like that, you can just clone it, and then you have nice crops, and you stop rare diseases, not diseases, species, from going extinct. Adult stem cells, so any adult can donate their stem cells, and they can be given to a patient with faulty cells to help them. So if someone has faulty heart cells, you could transplant your own stem cells to them. Then embryonic stem cells are your main one. Those are the ones people want because they can turn into any cell at all in the human body. So people with diabetes could get insulin-producing stem cells, differentiated from the embryonic stem cells. And if you could, well, you can. If you get an embryo with the same genetic material as a patient, you can just transfer the stem cells directly into a person, and that can help grow body parts back and whatnot. But people don't like the idea of growing a baby just to take all its stem cells. It's not a baby, it's an embryo. So some people don't like that, and it's viewed as unethical by some people. And it's important when you take stem cells from either a volunteer or an embryo that it doesn't have any viruses, because if it has viruses, it will pass on to the patient, and the patient could become very ill. And then finally, you have cancer, which is in your eukaryotes. Stem cells are only eukaryotes. Cancer is also only eukaryotes. It's when mitosis keeps happening at an uncontrolled rate. So it keeps growing and dividing due to a mutation. The cells are a bit faulty, they aren't working right, so they just keep splitting when they're not meant to. And that creates tumours. There's two types of tumours. Benign tumours are not cancer. They're from whatever other reason. They only stay in one place, so you might get a tumour on your arm or whatever, but it's not cancer. It doesn't move, it's not going to go to your leg, for example, even though it's the same tissue. It's not dangerous, but you still want to get it checked out because it could be malignant tumours, which are cancerous and are very dangerous and could kill you. They are fatal sometimes. They grow and spread to other tissues, and sometimes they'll break off and go to other parts of your body through your bloodstream. If they go somewhere else and form another tumour, they're called secondary tumours. So if you think you have a tumour, you should probably get it checked out, because it could be cancer and you could die from it. Anyone can get cancer, literally anyone can get it, but some things increase your risk. So smoking is more likely to get lung cancer, obesity is more likely to get heart cancer, UV rays and radiation exposure from the sun, you're more likely to get skin cancer. Certain viruses like hepatitis B or C, you're more likely to get breast cancer. Genetics, so if your parents have cancer, you're more likely to get cancer. The BRCA gene, you're more likely to get breast or ovarian cancer. But that is the main bits of cells. There are more topics, of course, like microscopy and digestion, enzymes, the blood, more in-depth look at the structure of a leaf, phloem and xylem, root hair cells, diffusion, osmosis, and whatnot. But this is a quick overview of everything cells, and it is 20 minutes or so. I hope this was helpful. and I hope you enjoyed.